and that's it. And my odds of getting that listing go through the roof if I can have that happen.
So the big question is, what are the top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate, grow their teams, and add more transactions year over year while so many struggle? If you ever thought about this, you're not alone. No one has been able to get the answers until now.
We spent the last few years helping agents sell billions in real estate, rubbing shoulders with top producers, which got us thinking, how can we expose more people to these insights to help raise the standard in the whole real estate industry? We then realized that we could help bridge the gap by getting the secrets from the best of the best so that you can succeed. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Elite Agent Secrets Show. Today we've got Mark Young with us. He's been in the real estate for 18 years. He actually bought his first property at only 21 years old and has been licensed for the last 14 years. He's already got over 1,100 transactions to his name, over $155 million sold. He's currently got 6 agents and 3 admin staff. And Mark has built an absolute fucking monster business. Probably going to get bigger. He's been telling some stories off air. He's got big plans. So today he's got some bombs to drop. You all want to hear what it's like to close 1,100 deals. So Mark, thanks for jumping on the show and willing to unpack your 3 secrets to success for our audience.
My pleasure. Glad to be on.
Dude, this is exciting. We got chatting off the air. There's been a lot of changes in your life. However, give the audience a little bit of context. Take us back into day one. What did that look like? And why were you crazy enough to get into the real estate niche, just like all of us on this podcast?
Yeah, so I was going to college in Northeast Ohio and was going for marketing management. And at the time on TLC, or I think it was like TLC, there was Flip This House, and that was kind of a cool thing to do. And so my buddy and I went to his dad and asked for some money to flip a house, and he said no. So we went back and asked him a bunch more times, and he finally said yes. And so we kind of partnered. We bought our first house. I just turned 21. We flipped it. To make a long story short, we made about $35,000. We split it between us. And it was my second year of college, and this really sharp looking Italian professor came in and was like, had a really cool accent and was, looked really, really like to do, and said to us, about how if you work really hard and you get your master's degree and all that stuff, it's, someday you'll be able to make between $45,000 and $55,000 a year. And I'm like, dude, we just did that like in a little house that we flipped that we did just like for fun. And I picked up my book bag and I walked out. And so that's kind of like my little story. The backstory of that is my mom was licensed and still is licensed as a realtor now for close to probably 25 years. And my uncle owned still owns a company locally here. And so I basically fired my mom as my realtor and said, listen, I want to get my license and I love you, but I need to make a couple bucks along the way. And that was in August of 2007. And just a couple months later, 2008 hit, the crash hit, and kind of had to hit the ground, either stay in the business and just be a nutcase or leave. And I decided to stay.
So you basically got into this industry in the worst economic time it's ever seen in its history.
Yeah, just about a couple months right beforehand. Yep.
So you probably got in and were like, oh my God, this looks so easy. Everyone's selling about 50 homes a day right about now. And then it was like, yeah, there's this financial crisis demolished the world economy.
It was housing. The really funny part is like, so hindsight looking back, yes, exactly what you said, except that once the crash happened, like 6 months in, I'll never forget. It was in the summer of 2008, and one of the other agents at the company who had been in the business for a really long time said, "Isn't it really, really hard? Like, isn't it hard to like do what you have to do right now?" And I remember thinking like, yeah, but no, because I didn't really know any. I mean, I didn't sell real estate beforehand. So from a perception standpoint, it seemed harder, but also like I never got up and sold real estate in the quote unquote easy times, right? So I just got up and worked hard, but it was crazy.
See, I think the biggest thing for you is you didn't have the perspective that everybody else had. So your reality was quote unquote different than what their reality was because they sold when shit was easy. You got in when the business was hard, which means you had a stronger foundation to then catapult you, over the next coming years when things got quote unquote easier, right?
Yes, correct. Yep, yep. If you could put it into words, what happened? That's exactly what happened. I didn't know it at the time. I just knew it was. I just knew that if you watched the news or read the newspaper or anything, hopped online the internet, everything said that the world was ending, and all I knew was that my phone was still ringing, and there was people looking to buy and sell houses. So that's it.
Why do you think your phone was ringing and your colleagues wasn't? What were you doing differently at that time? And take us through like what your first year looked like.
Yeah. So, I mean, the serious but also kind of funny answer is like I was 24, 25. I just got married at the time, and we were planning on having a child, and we found out that in fact she was pregnant, and I was like, oh well. I'm either gonna make this thing work or not. And honestly, a lot of it was driven by like just me being, not to like stereotype, but just like me being a dude and just like knowing I got to take care of my family and I got to like just kill it. And so if the phone rang, if as long as the person on the other end had a pulse, I was going to see if they were able to buy or sell something.
Yeah, just that hustle. You said the hustle. Like you're like, I'm just going to go after it. So take us through your first few years, if you can. It's been a couple of years since then. Like, but what do you know roughly what your kind of scale? Because now you're at 1,100, which is fucking crazy. So what did it look like year one, kind of roughly through the last 14 or so years?
Yeah. So I actually just did this for an agent on my team. They were asking because they got licensed in April of 21, and so they've actually done really well. They spent a lot of time kind of training throughout the year, and they really got active late summer, early fall, and they've sold four houses that closed by the end of the year. And so she was talking to me about like, okay, so that's what I sold my first year, but like you sold all these houses. What was your first year like? So I pulled the stats. In my first year, I sold 6 houses, and I was like, I got you by 2, but the reality is my mom helped me sell 1. So really, I only got you by 1. And so we were just kind of having a banter about like, it's easy to look at year 15 almost and then see, okay, over 1,100 homes, but then to go back to year 1, like what you're asking. So my first year was 6 houses. My next year was 14 or 16 houses. It doubled the year after that. Actually, it went up to just over 40 houses the year after that. It doubled after that. And every year since, it's been between 100 and 140 houses.
Wow.
Jesus. So you actually got to a point where you were doing north of 100 homes a year in basically 5 years. 5 or 6 years, you were doing over 100 homes a year. What would you say?
That's crazy impressive.
Yes, that is mental. What would you say is your biggest like takeaway from doing that? Like with that level of scale, like what really took you from 6 to 14, 14 to 30, 30 to like 60, 60 then to 100? What were those? Was it the same thing over and over again? Was it adding other sources of lead generation? Because you can only do so many open houses, or So what was it for you that allowed you to see such dramatic increases year over year?
Yeah, and as a little side note, there wasn't a lot of open houses on foreclosures and the short sales, so we had to find other ways to do it. So that said, there's 2 things. One is just the absolute hustle, and whether it was online lead gen, sending mailers to the court record information I had for people that were losing their houses. I mean, it was obviously a completely different time than what you would do to lead gen today, but just really any avenue to attack the specific market or the specific sort of market that we were in. And it was an adjustment every 6 months or so. It was like, okay, this particular website that was selling leads at $40 a pop now either went away or there was a new opportunity. And so this was even before. I don't know if Zillow. I think Zillow was around, but it was way before. Like that was like the main monster that everybody went to, right? So it was a little bit of like just hustling with whatever lead sources you can. And then the second thing was there was no way that I was able to do it unless I used leverage, which was, hiring and growing and starting to grow.
But before we get into that, leading people into your second topic there, let's dive into your first one. This is, I think you get the award on the Elite Agency Secret Show for the most cryptic first topic, because it just says STP See the People. So break down to us what See the People is to Mark Young, and tell us more.
Yeah, so I had a mentor, and they kind of mentioned that. They said STP is not motor oil. It's actually what we do in this industry, right? We see the people. And the reality is that if you see more people than the next person, you're going to make more money than them in most scenarios, right? So if I picked you up and put you in my hometown, and you were way better of a salesperson than me, but I knew way more people than you, most likely, until over time, I'm going to sell more houses than you. And it's because I know more people. And it's not just knowing them. It goes back to actually the STP part, seeing them, connecting with them, whether it's, you take 14 years ago, 15 years ago, and a text message was still there, but it wasn't as acceptable to do business in certain ways like it is now. So today it could be shooting out a text every quarter, just saying, hey, checking in, was in your neighborhood, was thinking about you. It could be, taking your top 50, your top 100 sphere, and, setting a schedule and taking them out to lunch or coffee, and just, over the course of a 12-month period, and actually connecting with them, having a quarterly event or an annual event, maybe around Christmas time or something. So actually putting yourself, remove yourself out from social media, remove yourself out from behind the laptop, from staring at your phone, and going out and actually talking and meeting people.
Yeah. And when it comes to seeing the people, getting those connections, part of it is time. We all know that there's going to be a certain element of time. What, in my mind, what you're also talking about is if I was to think about branding, is that local celebrity as well. It's people know you as the realtor in town, that's kind of seeing them and hanging out with them. Is there a way, or is there certain ways, methodologies for seeing the people, aka making and building those connections, which you found most effective, whether that is events, it could be, mailers, it could be, even just meeting people at bars. I don't know what it is, but actually growing that kind of local sphere from not in front of your laptop, from out in the world.
Yeah, it's a little bit like courting or dating. I mean, in the sense that, you make the initial connection, to use the analogy of a date. You make a connection, you go grab a cup of coffee, maybe it goes well, you leave from there. Then what? Is there a follow-up to it? Do you send some flowers? Do you send a little note? Right? It's a bit cheesy, but the reality is that's kind of how it is, right? You go into a local law firm, you introduce yourself, you hand out some business cards. Maybe it's for, bankruptcy work or divorce work, estate work. And you explain that you just like to be a resource if you can, right? So they say, great. You get an appointment with the lawyer, you sit down, you just go over your 15-minute spiel or whatever, you ask them some questions, you leave, and maybe you send the receptionist a cookie tray, right? It's little things like that allow you to get yourself in the door, from both a professional standpoint, using a referral partner like an attorney, or even just having an open house, right? You have 6 or 7 couples come through, half of them will fill out the form. Well, that's great that you have the information, but what do you do with that then, right? It's about actually making another connection with them.
I think it's one of the excuse me, I think it's one of the secret superpowers of open houses that people negate is the how fast you build a sphere, basically. Also, the connections with vendors and agents. People underestimate how you can leverage those, because if you start holding a lot of open houses, and it's not something you have to do forever, but you can actually build up something pretty quick. If you've got the time, you can hold 5, 6, 7 a week in a weekend, or however that looks. You can build something if you're new. I'm thinking more about newer agents as well.
And I think as far as the new agent, this is getting a bit in the weeds as far as the actual open house goes. But the reality is people come through the open house and you'll ask them, are you working with a realtor? And a lot of times they'll say, yeah. But the reason they say yeah is because they talked to some realtor 3 weeks ago, and they think in their mind that they're working with them, whatever that means. And so what I have found is that a lot of newer agents kind of will, negate or be negative about the fact that, well, yeah, 6 people came through, but they're all working with agents. Well, what does that mean? Have you reached out and asked them? Have you, I promise you, if you ask what the agent's name is, if 10 of them say that they're working with agents, half are going to say, hang on, I got to check in my phone, because they don't know, they're not really working with them. So it's going from super cold business like that, where they're just walking in, you're shaking their hand and you're saying, like, welcome to the house. If you have any questions, let us know, to going through Google and finding the referral partners in your area, the lawyers, the accountants, the financial planners, et cetera.
So is that one of the ways that you found best, is those vendor relationships? I think it's the most apt description for, like, because estate planners, attorneys, I'm not sure on certain states, but one of the ones that we know works well in some, which they're allowed, is divorce lawyers, right? As well, like, you obviously get a lot of sales from them because they're splitting, so they need to sell their house. Like, these are just realities. Like, I know it sucks, but, like, it's also like funerals and like all that stuff. It's like, selling, they've got to sell these houses, right? So are you finding that a big part of your sphere over the last 14 years has come predominantly from vendor relationships feeding you constant work? Yes.
And I choose to call them referral partners instead of vendors, but
yeah. Well, that makes sense. Referral partners.
Yeah, no, but so when I want, but yes, they are a vendor to my specific business itself, but what I explain to them is that I'm looking for a partnership. I'm looking for someone that can refer me business, and then I can refer business back to. And it's got to go both ways. Not that I expect it to go both ways, but it's got to be something that we are comfortable in working together. And yes, I just sold another house from an attorney that, now that I think about it, has used to send me more work. For whatever reason, I haven't got a ton, but out of the blue, I haven't heard from him for 6 or 8 months, and he calls me and says, I've got this situation. It's an estate. It's got to be sold. And it was a cream puff sale. I mean, on the market, had 15 showings, sold in the first weekend. And that was something that, like, I woke up that day and didn't expect to get a phone call to get a nice listing. But that's a vendor, that's a referral partner that you could that if you don't have in your toolbox, I don't care what the market's like, it's going to be difficult to grow.
I like how you put this, is you tell them that you're going to contribute to their business and you're going to ask them contribute back to their business. For anybody who's never done this, what does that conversation look like? Do you show the intent of contribution and contribute first? Or, like, does that happen organically? How much do you push? Because I've run into this issue where it's like, I got 4 clients. I take them to a financial advisor. I tell them, I got 4 clients for you, in a polite way. What do you got for me? And I have not heard back for the last 2 or 3 weeks. This person, like, wants to meet with me in person. They're listening to this podcast. I would love to meet with you in person after we make money together. Until then, it's a waste of time. I told you I need my clients serviced. And there's been no, like, it's kind of weird because I'm like, hey, I got money for you. Do you want it?
Yeah, but that's because you're taking the assumption that what is going to drive their business or their willingness to work with you is money.
Okay. Help unpack that, because I think you're 100% right, because that's how I'm motivated. I'm like, go out, sell, and I get it. Different people are motivated by different things, but, like, elaborate on that. How do you deal with that? How do you incentivize them? How do they do a good job for you? What does that look like?
So I treat it like it's very relational. So for me, you use the word organic, I think. For me, organically, I sit down and I can tell, I think, usually, if this is going to be a good fit, right? So a fit meaning I'm okay with doing business with people that I don't necessarily like or want to hang out with, as long as there's a good working professional relationship, right? So it isn't like I draw the line in the sand where I think to myself, well, if I can't see myself on the golf course with them, then I'm not going to do business with them. It's not like that. But
no, I don't care. As long as they do a great job, they service my clients, and they are a good fit for my clients, I got to remove myself from that picture, because I know they're going to be the best thing for my clients.
So here, I'll unpack it a bit like this. I'll use the example of if you're driving down the road and you call a for sale by owner, the for sale by owner answers the phone and they say, a for sale by owner, if they have a sign in their yard, they're basically saying, I want to sell my house, right? Well, that's the assumption until you get them on the phone and they tell you, and you tell them that you're a real estate agent and you're calling about the house. most agents think that the intent or the point of that phone call is to go and meet with them and get the listing, because that's what we're in business for, right? Except they see right through that. And there are a lot of reasons why they have a for sale by owner sign in the yard. And I don't know all those reasons, but everybody has their own reasons why, right? And most of it has to do with an umbrella of either we want to save money and we think we can do this on our own, or we just don't like real estate people, right? So when I call, it's not about like, here's an example of how it would go. Like, is this the person from 123 Main Street? Yes, great. Hi, this is Mark Young with eXp Realty. And assuming I can get through that without them saying, I don't want to list my house, assuming I can get through there, I ask them, when's a good time I can come over and take a look at the house? And they'll say things like, well, do you have a buyer? And I'll say things like, I've been selling real estate for 14 years in Northeast Ohio. I've sold over 1,100 homes, and you're asking me if I have a buyer potentially for your house. Really? And they'll usually laugh and say, okay, well, we're not going to list the house. Or they'll usually go on the defensive about that and say, yeah, but it's for sale by owner. We don't want to list it. And I'll say something to the effect of, that's great, because I don't know if I want to list your house either. I don't know anything about your house. You have a sign in the front yard saying it's for sale. I happen to be in an industry where I sell houses. Would you mind setting a time for 15 minutes that I can come over and take a look at it? Because I don't know if I have a buyer for your house. I have buyers, but I don't know what your house is like. So anyway, my point is, in that example, they have a house to sell. I might have a buyer that wants to buy the house, but I don't know if that's going to work because I don't know anything about the house. So in your instance, you have these clients for this particular financial guy or woman, and you're saying, look, see, I have these people, you should work with them, or I want something from you. But that's usually not how that works. If I can get myself over the threshold into their house and I'll take a look around the house, I don't bring any documents with me. I just have my cell phone. I'm walking through. It's not about a sales pitch. And at the end, I'll leave a business card and I'll say, listen, here's what I think about your house. I think it's really either nice or I think it's overpriced, and here's why, or whatever the case is. I give them a little, spiel and say, if you in the future ever consider listing it, I'd love to chat with you. And that's it. And my odds of getting that listing go through the roof if I can have that happen. So in your instance, you're dangling something that they might not care about.
Okay, so how do you get them closer to caring? Do you give them the client? Do you make the introduction? Because
No, you have to find out you have to get to know them and find out what they care about. They might say, listen, you don't understand. I hate real estate agents. And you can say, well, why? And then they can say, well, I dealt with this individual this one time and here's what they did and so on and so forth. And you could say, well, I can appreciate that. And let me tell you something. As a young guy in the industry, here's some of my goals. And I've actually experienced working with agents like that. And honestly, I can't stand that either. I'd like to change the perception one client at a time. So when's a great time that you and I can sit down and have a chat on how we can maybe do some business together?
And there we go. That's the difference between 1,100 homes.
That's exactly what I was going to say as well. It kind of makes me rethink my approach actually quite a bit, because I'm like, hey, I have clients A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Here's all their characteristics, all their traits. And they may be looking at me like I either got 5 heads or I'm just talking out of my ass because they've never experienced it. Mm-hmm. So now I got to take it a step further and kind of take a chance and be like, when can we actually see if there's any synchronicity, if there's any potential for us to work together by servicing these people together?
There's something that I don't mean this as a religious type of statement, but there's something like biblical about breaking bread, right? You sit down, everybody's got food in front of them, and you get to know it's kind of an intimate setting. And so I try to break bread as much as I can. So in your example, like instead of walking, and I don't know exactly what happened, but instead of walking in the office and saying, here's the 4 clients I have for you, there's some money involved, and you should either take it or leave it. And if you leave it, you're stupid. Hey, listen, like what's your Thursday like next week or the week after? I'd love to take you to the new coffee house or the new whatever, right? And you sit down, and you don't talk at all about business. It will come up because that's the point of the conversation. I mean, that's why you're there. But you're getting to know them. Are they married? How long are they married? Are they local? Have they always been local? Do they have any kids? Et cetera, et cetera. And then there's this intimate setting where they feel sort of intimate about you in the situation. You feel intimate about them. You're kind of getting to know each other on a personal level. And then you guys can walk away and decide if you want to do business together or not.
It's a totally different approach than kind of what I've been taught, experienced recently per se. And just for lack of better words, there is no shortcut in this relationship building stuff, which is seeing the people. It doesn't mean see your clients. It means see the people that you're involved with, see the relationships, see the agents, see your referral partners, figure out what their needs are, dive deeper, dig deeper.
It's meeting them where they're at. That's what it's like. Where are they at? And I've got to meet them there, right? Because if they don't want money, this isn't a great example. If they wanted time, for example, you know what I mean? Time's more valuable than money to them. Then it's like, hey, we can do the X, Y, Z, and it'll give you all this time. You know, you'll get less or do whatever, but it's done. You know, you forget about it. And I think that just goes to show. I mean, this is why exactly the reason we do this show. I mean, everyone listening to that is like, you just got coached, right? That's someone who's done 1,100 deals, being like, this is how you build relationships. This is where you go wrong, which is literally the whole fucking purpose of this show. Like, this is why we love it. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in gaining access to our courses and coaching 100% free, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com.